My friend, let's call him Mike, was meticulous about keeping his yard clean, especially during fall when leaves made an unruly mess. His neighbor, on the other hand, wasn't bothered much about yard maintenance. Despite owning the house for a few years, the neighbor hadn't moved in yet and lived several states away. On a crisp fall afternoon, Mike was busy wrapping up his yard work, meticulously using a leaf-sucking machine to clear up the fallen leaves. As he finished, a gust of wind carried a small bunch of leaves into the neighbor's driveway, maybe 20 leaves at most. Dismissing it as an innocent incident, Mike retired inside his home. But a mere 20 minutes later, there came an unexpected knock on the door accompanied by a police squad car parked outside. An officer stood at the door, stating they'd received a complaint about leaves blown into the driveway. Mike was incredulous, and the officer seemed visibly annoyed at the triviality of the situation. Annoyance turned into bemusement as Mike requested the officer to inspect both his meticulously clean yard and the sorry state of his neighbors. And what a sight it was! The neighbor's driveway housed an old, abandoned car that had been shipped there a whopping 8 months ago and left to gather dust, with the neighbor's absence only adding to the neglect. Seizing an opportunity, Mike offered to clear the leaves promptly while quietly asking the officer if they could perform a favor, to check the car for valid registration and insurance. As Mike diligently cleaned the few leaves from the driveway, the officers walked over to the forgotten car, examining its VIN and verifying its details. Meanwhile, the neighbor, observing everything through his doorbell camera, curiously inquired about the commotion outside. Then came the revelation. It turns out there's a local law stating that any car parked in a driveway must be properly registered and insured. The officers made a call to the neighbor and informed him that his neglected vehicle was in clear violation. They handed him an ultimatum: within 2 weeks, he either had to secure proper registration, insurance, and an e-check for the immobile car or have it towed and face fines. In the end, the neighbor inadvertently set himself up for a 10-hour drive to sort out the legality of his dormant vehicle, all due to a mere handful of dead leaves from Mike's yard that blew into his driveway.
Fresh out of college, I landed a job as a laborer in a construction site. It was a whole new world for me: the loud machinery, the camaraderie among the workers, and the sheer physical demands of the job. Despite the challenges, I was eager to prove myself. However, there was an unexpected challenge waiting for me in the break room. My mom, sweet as ever, packed me nutritious homemade meals, neatly stored in the communal fridge. But soon, my lunches started disappearing, leaving me hungry and frustrated. It became a regular occurrence, and each time I'd hope it wouldn't happen again, but alas, my food vanished without a trace. The culprit turned out to be a contractor, a guy who seemed to take pleasure in tormenting me. His attitude was dismissive, almost mocking, when I caught him red-handed. "What are you going to do about it?" he sneered, his colleagues snickering in the background. Being a direct worker, I was at a disadvantage. My co-workers advised me to let it go, assuring me that the contractor would move on soon. But the injustice of it all fueled a fire within me. I couldn't just let it slide. So, I confronted him, only to be met with derision. "Go make your food uneatable then," he taunted, thinking he had the upper hand. That encounter triggered a turning point in my life, setting me off on an unexpected journey. Fueled by indignation and a bit of hunger, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I rushed to the store and purchased the spiciest hot sauce I could find. From that day forward, I doused my food in it, almost as a deterrent to anyone eyeing my meals. What began as a retaliatory measure became a curious fascination. I found myself drawn to the fiery sensation, the endorphin rush that came with consuming spicy foods. It started with hot sauce but quickly escalated. I sought out the hottest peppers, the fieriest condiments, and the most scorching snacks available. My obsession with heat expanded beyond the workplace. I incorporated hot spices into every meal at home. Friends and family couldn't comprehend my newfound obsession. They labeled me as someone bordering on the edge of insanity. Yet, the thrill of heat became my constant companion. As years passed, my love for all things spicy never waned. I changed jobs and industries, but my penchant for spiciness remained a defining trait. The incident of stolen food repeated itself once, and this time, I found solace in the camaraderie of my coworkers who knew my habits. A new culprit fell victim to my fiery deterrent, facing the wrath of my intentionally spiced meals. Recently, I reached a new milestone. I successfully grew my first ghost pepper plant. The satisfaction of adding these homegrown peppers to my own sauces brought me an unparalleled sense of achievement. It was while enhancing a bottle of Blue Dragon Sriracha with these homegrown peppers that I reflected on this journey, one that had been sparked by the theft of food from an 18-year-old laborer. And here I am, still pursuing my passion for heat, finding joy in the reactions of friends and colleagues as they experience the intensity of Carolina Reaper snacks or ghost pepper-laced dishes. It's funny how a simple act of theft led me down a path to discover a fiery world I never knew existed.
It's a holiday week and I had tons of PTO to burn, so I took a half day today. Went to the mall to Christmas shop with my wife. She had a work situation come up, so she went somewhere quiet to make some calls. Side note, the quiet parts of malls are always in the corners with a massage store, where you have a 50-50 chance of getting one of the best massages of your life, or you leave with bruised vertebrae because he repeatedly jumped from the top of the ropes and gave your spine the people's elbow. And I sat down at the food court to read. Keep in mind, my wife and I had only been at the mall a few minutes when she had the work situation come up. I bought nothing during those few minutes, quite obviously. A group of 6 teenage boys sat down at the tables right next to mine. They were quiet, talking, looking at their phones, having a good time. I was reading a novel and I do remember laughing pretty hard at a funny part in the novel, making me the louder mall patron than the high schoolers. I remember this because I remember getting embarrassed because people looked at me laughing. They were dressed in everyday regular clothes. T-shirts and jeans. Nothing crazy. No gang colors, tattoos, or anything that would justify harassing them as potential criminals. One dude had a Demon Slayer t-shirt, FFS. These are genuinely high schoolers. I was dressed in business casual/business attire. Oh, and I look white as a vampire, and all 6 of them were black. Those details are important for what is going to happen next. A mall security guard walks up to the young men and tells them that they need to get out of the mall or shop because they are not allowed to just loiter. You know how kids do the whiny pleading voice when in trouble? That's what they did. We didn't do anything wrong, sir. Or we just got here, man. We didn't even get a chance to shop. Mall security guard wasn't having it. He raised his voice at them and condescendingly said, "Fine, the police can explain it to you before you're kicked out." So he left to get the police. The city I am in is notorious for their racist police. I knew what was about to happen. I spoke up to the group and told them that they are being unfairly targeted, not to say anything to the police when they arrive, and that I would do the talking. They agreed, of course. We chatted for a few seconds and they expressed their worry that they were in trouble for doing nothing wrong. Security guard and 2 police arrived at our tables 3 minutes later. Police didn't ask any questions, they just started lecturing them about how they can't just sit around at tables at the mall, that they must shop, etc. I spoke up and cut off the cop talking and said something similar to, hey, they are with me. They are all waiting on me to decide where we are going to eat. I've decided on Taco Bell. You guys want Taco Bell? The oldest in the group caught on immediately and said, hell yeah. Security guard said I was a liar and that he didn't understand why I cared. I said nothing to his greasy ass. I walked over to the side of their table between the police and did hand motions to get up, and I waited for them to all get up and start walking to Taco Bell, and then I walked behind them. I didn't make eye contact or say anything to the police because I'm a petty motherfucker. The police said nothing to me. Anyone know why that is? Was it because I looked like a corporate business person and they didn't want to deal with the paperwork and litigation? I half expected them to grab me by the collar or arm and move me out of the way, arrest me, or cite me. For what, though? But I was nervous in the moment. Then we ate Taco Bell together. We laughed our asses off and talked about the situation while waiting for our order. They were all very appreciative. They told me they had just gotten to the mall, they don't have records, that the security guard followed them as soon as they walked in, etc. And before that happened, and then the whole bus cheered. Come on, now? You mean to tell me you would have done nothing at all and watched kids get kicked out of the mall because they were black? I think most people would have spoken up or done something. Some would have gotten much angrier and louder about it than I did. Plenty of videos with this type of justified reaction. Difference between myself and how a normal person would handle it: I was petty about it, no eye contact, and I didn't talk to the police, and removed the excuse that they weren't shopping by buying lunch for them. Best $54 I spent this entire year. Haha, and the look on my wife's face when she came back to see me eating Taco Bell at a table with 6 high schoolers was worth the cost alone.
Amidst the emotional turmoil of a divorce caused by his ex-wife's infidelity, there were several complexities that lingered during the transitional period. In the 3 weeks after the separation, while the protagonist stayed with his parents, he would visit their shared home to pack his belongings and ensure their once-shared cats were cared for. This routine also included sorting through the mail that continued to arrive at their old address, despite his quick action to change his address officially. Throughout their time together, the protagonist had taken the responsibility of managing the mail. His ex-wife had never shown much interest in the daily influx of envelopes and parcels. She often dismissed it as mere junk, which led to occasional oversights on important matters like a lapsed car registration. Despite his efforts to separate crucial documents and reminders for her, she remained indifferent, neglecting even the more significant pieces of mail. During this period of separation, the protagonist made it clear to his ex-wife that his sole concern was retrieving his own mail. He diligently kept a pile of her unopened letters and packages in an obvious spot, respecting their agreed-upon boundaries. However, amidst this passive observance of mail boundaries, an interesting turn of events occurred when an envelope from the IRS arrived specifically addressed to his ex-wife. The thinness of the envelope suggested it might be related to a tax issue from the period before they were married, a mere 6 months before the revelation of her infidelity. In adherence to their arrangement, the protagonist didn't open the letter. Instead, he placed it among her stack of unattended mail during his next visit. Yet, upon returning on a subsequent trip, he noticed all the mail, including the IRS envelope, haphazardly discarded into the recycling bin. Though he recognized that it was no longer his responsibility or concern, a small sense of poetic justice sparked within him. While he refrained from interfering, a quiet satisfaction lingered, knowing that her indifference toward essential matters might have inadvertently led to an unforeseen problem for her. The protagonist chose to focus on moving forward, but the episode with the discarded IRS letter remained a bittersweet reminder of the consequences of neglecting important matters, a subtle reminder of the emotional complexities and unforeseen consequences that followed in the wake of their divorce. Working at a fast food franchise owned by my parents has been both a familiar comfort and a bustling hub of interactions, ranging from the delightful to the challenging. My boyfriend, whom I met at work, and a couple of his close friends, have joined our team on my boyfriend's recommendation. Over time, we've formed a tight-knit group, and our workplace has become a well-oiled machine of camaraderie and efficiency. One recurring figure in our workplace narrative was a young kid, around 16 years old, who had been a regular customer at our store for what felt like an eternity. Known for his brash and rude demeanor, this teenager had become notorious among us employees for his disrespectful behavior. His trademark move was throwing his debit card at whoever was taking his order, a gesture laced with disrespect that had irked many of us for years. A few months ago, the routine repeated itself. The clatter of a card landing on the counter echoed as he flung it my way. In that moment, something within me snapped. It was a culmination of enduring his disrespectful behavior over time that fueled my reaction. With an audible wow that escaped my lips, I did something unexpected. After processing his payment, I replicated his gesture. I threw the card back to him, mimicking his disrespectful action. Surrounded by his friends, they shared a laugh at the mirrored reflection of his behavior. Surprisingly, the incident seemed to hit a chord within him. From that day forward, a noticeable change emerged. Gone was the flinging of the card. Instead, he handed it over like any regular customer would, treating the transaction with the expected courtesy and respect. My coworkers were astounded by the transformation. The boy, whose card I had noticed was quite worn and battered, a clear sign of repeated card-flinging habits, had notably shifted his behavior. There was a newfound politeness in his interactions with us, an evident effort to communicate respect rather than disdain. It felt heartening to witness this change. Having observed him grow up, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in possibly influencing how he perceives and treats people, especially those in customer service roles, in the future. The incident served as a reminder of the impact we can have on others, even in the most unexpected moments, and the potential to instigate positive change through small actions and gestures.